hopefully we'll get one more in the next little bit.
It's ticking up every day. If we would have 10 years,
Good, what is it?
Elementary school is recognized as a recognition school by the State
I feel like
Department.
we get that a lot. Did we get that before?
day after our meeting.
Yeah, that's cool. Middle school.
Every day. And
First time since I've been here for the elementary school.
Okay, we're going to reopen the
affects us, but it does.
board meeting. I don't have a lot of remarks other than welcome back to school. Our last one was prior to school opening, so it seems like things have started well. We'll look forward to hearing more about it. The first thing on our agenda is the approval of the minutes from our August meeting. So hopefully everyone has had a chance to look at those. Any questions or comments or corrections for Connie on the minutes?
None.
Okay, can I get a motion to approve the minutes from the August meeting?
So moved.
Second. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Great. Thank you. Over to you, Dr. Monsanto.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody, and I do appreciate y'all coming out and being here. Before I get into my report, I'd like to ask Tricia to come up for a moment because we're very pleased that the elementary school has been has earned the distinction of being a recognition school by the State Department of Education. And so I'd like to present this with her, to hang somewhere nice. Now smile, Tricia.
Thank you.
Our other schools have also been recognized in the past, but I'm not sure if the elementary school has been since I've been here anyway. Last year as well? Okay. Well, congratulations again. Make wallpaper out of them soon, I guess. That'd be great. So this is the first meeting we've had since school's open, so I do want to welcome everybody back. It's nice that I think we had a really nice opening. People came back very enthusiastic and with a lot of positive energy. We were fully staffed, which is always a good thing. Thank you, Rachel, for working on that so much. And it is always amazing to me if you came into our buildings, a few days before school starts, you would never believe we're ready to open. Stuff is all over the hallway and things just look like a mess, and it somehow all comes together through the hard work of Mike Lee and his staff. And it just lends itself to a really nice opening, so thank you to them for that. And now we're seeming like we're already in mid-season form when you cross in our hallways. Kids know where they're going, and the teachers are all in their rooms working really hard, so it's really nice to see. Our new teachers seem to be off to a good start as well. We have a pretty good teacher mentor program that they've been involved in. We had an opportunity as administrators to sit in on a luncheon for them with their mentors and mentees together. It was very nice. So they're off and running. And we've had our high school back to school night already. It was very well attended, and it seemed like a pretty nice evening. The middle school back to school night is next Thursday, and then the elementary school is the following Thursday. So we're excited for that as well. What I'd like to do next is just talk a little bit about the enrollment report and class size report. So I'll ask Connie to put that up on the screen. And so the first slide you will see, next one, is what our overall enrollment looks like compared to our projected enrollment, perhaps. There you go. So as you can see, we have a total of 1,640 students in our district. Some of those students are ungraded, as you know. And it's pretty close to the projected, although where they are is a little different. But we're just one off from the projected number. That bubble, that large bubble we have is just going through the high school. So the high school is a little bit tight right now in terms of space. And you can see our two largest classes are in 9th grade and in 5th grade, where we had to add an additional section in 5th grade this year. Overall, the elementary enrollment's down by 7 students, middle school up by, 15 students or something? And the high school was up by 18 students from where we were last year. And then going further to the next slide, this keeps on going in and out. You can see the class size breakdown. At first, we'll review at the elementary level, and you can see we're pretty solid. It's always easier to manage the elementary class sizes, try to balance them, make them as even as we possibly can. But the class sizes are favorable with an average of 20.5 students, and you can see throughout the grade levels they are all well balanced. So, for example, first grade you have one section at 19, 4 at 20. That's what that refers to. So I think we're real solid there. If we go to the middle school, the class sizes are very similar to what they were the previous year. And they range from a low of 14.6 to 25, but that one's in chorus on average. You can see that there's a breakdown of a frequency distribution of how many classes have number of 15 or below students from 15 to 19, 20, 24, 25 to 29, or 30 plus. And we do have the one, which is chorus, that has more than 30, which you might expect. We have a few that are in the 25 to 29 range, but majority happen to be in the 20 to 24 range. But it's something we keep a close eye on. Tom and I have talked about this a bit, and I think we're comfortable where things are currently. And then finally, the high school also compares very favorably to last year and previous years, very similar. We have an overall class average size of 20.2, and compared with last year, we have right now we have about 83% of our classes being 24 students or less. You can see there's a few in the 25 to 29 category, and we have in the performing arts is where you see the larger 30 plus classes. But the majority are in 24 and below. And that is subject to change, as Ann and I have discussed recently, because this is the time of year when students tend to drop from one section to another level. They like to try AP, for example, and if they find it's just a bit more challenging than they thought, they might drop to a different level. So some of these will bounce around a little bit, but not significantly. But overall, I think we're in good shape with our class sizes. Any questions on that at all? Okay, what I'd like to do now is ask Dr. Ketke to come up. She's going to be talking about the achievement profile, which are the test scores from our students. We have our principals. I asked them to sit towards the front of the room tonight, so questions do come up, whether it's specific for Mara or specific to one of our principals. They're here, so we can answer them as well. Okay, Mara?
So thank you, Dr. Montesano. It's my pleasure to talk about the achievement data for last school year this evening. And I'm going to actually begin this year by showing our college matriculation data from 2015 through 2019, because we often, we will go through data tonight. We will talk about some gains. We will talk about some dips. We will talk about what they are telling us and what we're looking into as a result. But I think it's worth, really focusing on the senior class last year and where they went to school. So as you can see by this bar graph, 61% of the students attended the most competitive colleges, slight rise from prior years, and 21% attended highly competitive colleges. So we continue to see a lot of consistency in this data, and I think, that's important to mention.
Can you remind us how that's defined?
Yep, well, it's defined by, it's Barron's, correct, Ann? Yeah. But I can give you some examples. So most competitive colleges include where our students attend: Harvard, University of Michigan, Duke, Georgetown. Examples of highly competitive colleges include Denison, University of Pittsburgh, go Panthers, and Emerson. And very competitive colleges include UC Boulder, Arizona State. So just to give you a flavor of some of those categories of colleges in which our students from last year's class attend.
Do you know if the colleges change categories?
Not significantly. They're pretty solid, except for maybe some, up-and-coming universities, like the University of Pittsburgh. Okay, so returning to our younger students, these are the 2019 New York State ELA test scores. And, we usually begin by looking at them in the context of how we did in comparison to Westchester as well as New York State. And, this slide clearly shows that Bronxville is performing very well compared to other Westchester districts and across the state, which, we expect. And then when we do see dips, which I'll talk about in some upcoming slides in particular grades, we also look to see if those dips occurred across Westchester and across New York State. Because very often, we wonder about the quality of the exam, and we need to look at it in that light. So we compare our performance against Westchester and New York State to sort of understand where we see dips and put them in that particular context. This slide is grades 3 through 8. The blue bar represents percentage of our students who are scoring at level 3 and 4, which is considered proficient and beyond proficiency. The high line, the green line, represents any data point from selected schools you see across the bottom of the slide, including Chappaqua, Scarsdale, Pelham, Rye, just to give us sort of a smaller slice of Westchester in terms of where we compare. So you can see there that in many cases we're setting the high bar in ELA. In grade 5, we had, this data was significant to us. I'll talk about it a little more in detail. And in grade 7 as well, although not as significant. So we just look at this to sort of compare with more like populated districts across Westchester. In this slide, you're looking at students compared across a grade. So for example, the grade 8 bar in 2019 represents how our 8th graders did last year. And in 2018, those are how our 8th graders did the year before. So these are not the same kids. This is a comparison across grades. Usually when we think about this data, we're looking at the health of the curriculum in any particular grade as compared to the state test. So are there areas of the curriculum in any particular grade that we need to concentrate a little more heavily on? And in general, if we see a dip of 10% or more is where we start to dig deeper into that information. Approximately 5 to 6% of a drop is marginal number of students, maybe 5, could even be less. But if you see 10% drop, then we dig a little deeper. This data is students to students. So for example, when you're looking at grade 8, 2019, you're seeing that 86% of our students achieve proficiency. And in 7th grade, it was 74% of those same students. So this is student to students, same kids. And we see growth in a lot of these bars, but in grades 5 and 7, we see some dips. So I'll talk a little bit more about that. So first I'm going to address the 5th grade. They had the most significant drop between 4th and 5th. And I think it's important to understand that we do collect a lot of internal data all year around their reading and writing progress. So what you're looking at, the bars on your right-hand side under grade 5, we had 67% of those students score proficiently on the New York State test. In our reading assessments, which are internal, 91% of them were at benchmark, and 70% of them were at benchmark in terms of their writing. Now, the year before, we had 91% of our students, those same kids, score proficiently in the ELA test, and 86% of them read at benchmark, and 70% of them wrote according to benchmark standards. So the point, I think, of this slide is that none of the internal data would have predicted that kind of drop in the state test scores that we saw this year. This is something we're talking to TC about. It's something that they have mentioned, they've experienced across multiple schools. But, you know, we see steady progress in terms of their writing levels and even some increase in terms of their reading levels. So it was difficult. These numbers were difficult for us because the internal data that we collect would not have anticipated this. And, you know, I just go back to the idea that across Westchester, 45% of students in Westchester perform proficient on this particular test.
Was there something about this test?
So
So
there
glad you
were
asked.
thank you.
I have skills.
So there were, we looked, you know, at how the kids did, and I think, you know, even though we can justify sort of our dip against some other dips that we see across the state, and we do have wonderings about the test, we still do look at how our students did and try to pick out some areas we could focus on or are certainly worth conversations around what we're teaching our kids. So in many cases where our students fell down were part to whole questions. So an example of those questions is, how do paragraphs 9 and 8 contribute to the story? So we refer to them as part to whole questions, and this was an area where these were multiple choice questions where our students did not do as well. There was one in particular which was a constructed response, which means an essay, where the 5th grade students were given 2 stories, and they were asked to compare and contrast the way the author uses narrative point of view to tell their stories. We actually thought this was pretty difficult for 5th graders. I sat with a group of middle school ELA teachers who confirmed that. And so that was an area that we saw a drop. We will certainly think about point of view. Compare and contrast is often the most difficult portion of the test because there's a lot of reading involved on top of a lot of writing. But these were the 2 areas that sort of stuck out in terms of our student performance, and we're going to focus on them.
So, just generally, is there something about the, for want of a better way of putting it, the leap or the transition from 4th grade to 5th grade that is dramatic, such that it could account for, well, maybe, you know, there was a lot for them to learn or new things for them to learn, and that contributed to the drop? Or, I mean, were these the questions that they had part to whole problems with, were they in the afternoon on the exam day? I mean,
That I couldn't tell you. I mean, they release a portion of the questions, so you don't get a sense of where these fell. I will tell you that compare and contrast, the extended essay is usually one of the last things they do. That I could speak to. I don't know. I mean, it was a 2-day test.
that was. Sure. But generally, from year to year, 4 to 5, you might there's a dip of some sort. Maybe not this dramatic, but some sort.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
So grade 7, certainly did well, but that was an area where we did see a slight dip. So we looked again, part to whole questions came up. So this is something that Rosanna Colonides, our lit coach, we have discussed, and she will be talking with the teachers. You can actually do a lot when you model through read aloud about part to whole, and we're going to do some work around there. Point of view came up again, although this was in a multiple choice question, so not exactly the same way it was assessed in the 5th grade. So we're going to, dig into that and just make sure we're doing enough point of view work with the kids. And then trace and evaluate arguments in informational text. So the students were given informational text and asked to, restate the argument and evaluate it. 78% of our students were proficient in that. But, with all the argumentative work going on across the TC work, we're hoping for a little bit of improvement there. So again, that's a decent number, but we'd like to see a little bit of improvement in their ability to evaluate arguments. So this slide, I think, is worth noting. This is combined 3 through 8 data from the year 2013 to the year 2019. I think it's important to mention that in 2014 was the first year we piloted some TC work in our middle school. But over the course of this number of years, we've moved from 69% of our students 3 through 8 combined at proficiency levels to 82% of our students at proficiency levels, and from 31% of our students below proficiency levels to 18% below proficiency levels. And this is all Common Core.
When did they changed the test, I think, twice? Was that 13, 14, or was that before then?
Yeah, prior to this.
That's out of this picture.
Okay, moving on to math. So here again you see Bronxville in blue, Westchester in red, and New York State in green. And again, we are outperforming both Westchester and New York State. But we sort of look at this to put the tests in context and understand our performance as it relates to others. Similar graph for math. Blue bars represent the percentage of our students who are proficient. Green bar represents the high point across comparison districts in Westchester, and the red the low point. So as you can see here, we're pretty close to the high point in a lot of places. 8th grade data is always, somewhat skewed in the sense that a majority of our 8th graders are spending much more time on the Algebra 1 curriculum than they are on the grade 8 math Common Core curriculum, and I will discuss those results tonight as well. This is grade to grade comparison. So again, 8th graders this year were at 77% proficient, and the year before, students in 8th grade were at 67% proficient. So we see some, some improvement, and again, we look at this for the health of the curriculum in any particular grade and how well it aligns with the New York State testing program. And, where we do see some drops, it is not generally as significant as, 5 or 6 points, which is in a large number of kids. This data to me seems pretty stable. Now we're looking by cohort. So these 8th graders were at 77% proficient this year. The year before, as 7th graders, they were at 79% proficient. Again, not significant movement either way here. The most you see here is in 6th grade with a drop of 6%. I would mention to you that the current 7th grade students, well, they're 8th grade students now, last year's 7th grade students who were at 85% proficiency are the students who came through with the Singapore math background.
The current 8th graders have Singapore math?
Yes, because this would have been last year's 7th grade. Okay. Oh, sorry, it says chart title there. I have one. This is a similar slide, percentage of students proficient in mathematics from 2013 to 2019. And again, we were looking at about 60% of our students proficient in 2013, up to 85% in 2019, a decrease from 40% to 15% in terms of reaching proficiency levels. And in both cases here, we did, there was a lot of work done about, research-based curriculum alignment. So I think we're seeing some evidence that those were good moves. Okay.
Mara, I just do have to say, we should celebrate that prior slide. We really should.
Fine with me. Okay. I'll stay here for a moment. Celebratory pause. Okay. Regents data. Our students do very well on the Regents, so it's worth reporting and celebrating. The orange, so the blue portion of the graph represents the students scoring at level 5 for any particular Regents that we give. And then the red portion of the bar is percentage of students achieving at level 4. So for algebra, for example, 58% of the students are at level 5, 28% are at level 4. The orange line represents how many of our students actually take the exam. So we give 153 students the algebra exam, and where our blue is a little smaller, we're giving less students that particular exam. So, the Regents is fairly consistent with our students doing well. I will say, I did want to point out the global history exam was the new exam this year. You may recall we had talked about that at one point. It's the exam where students receive several documents. They have to identify the enduring issue of history represented in those documents and write an argument about how that particular enduring issue in history, such as power, has changed over time according to the documents. So this was a much more difficult exam, and our students, first time out, 65% of them scored at level 5, and 23% of them scored at level 4. So I would just say that the history teachers 6 through 12 have really been working on these skills for some time, and I do think some of the argumentative writing that we're doing across the TC work has influenced those numbers. So for a first-time exam, never having really seen what it would look like, I think those results are worth they did a nice job there, and now that it's out there, they tend to get better. We tend to get better and better results because we can really familiarize the kids with it.
So what, when do they take these exams? The Global New would be what, 10th graders? End of 10th.
Yeah, Algebra 1 varies. Some are 8th graders, some are 9th graders, some are 10th graders. English language art, the ELA exam is 11th in January. Science can be 10th, is usually 11th. And U.S. history is at the end of 11th.
And these all required by the state?
One science, U.S., world, math, and ELA. 5 regions.
Okay, I'm going to report on the 8th grade performance on the algebra regents again this year, just because this is only the second time we gave the algebra regents exam to 8th graders, and the results are consistent and also very strong. We had, one second. We had 69 8th grade students take this exam. And 62 of them scored a level 5. So kids are doing very well in algebra. I think it's was a good decision to do the algebra, offer the full algebra course and the regents in 8th grade. And these numbers are pretty impressive.
Mara, just clarify, that 62 is the number of students, not the percentage, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
69 students, 62 plus 7. Okay, advanced placement exams.
Change the colors.
So we gave 710 exams this year. We had 318 total AP students. AP student meaning that if I am a student in the 318, I could have taken 3 exams. I could have also taken another student out of the 318 could have taken 1 exam. So anyone who participates in any exam is considered an AP student, but across those 318 students, we gave 710 exams. And then out of those, 82% of the students received a score of 3 or higher on any one exam. So let me try to give you another example of that. I've rehearsed this several times, so hopefully I'll get it right. But Rachel rehearsed it with me, so she'll help me. So if I'm one of the 318 students, I might have gotten a 3 on multiple exams. I count towards that just once, not 3 times. So if I took 3 exams and got all 4s, I only count in those numbers 1 time. If I have another student who took 2 exams, one was a score of 2, another was a score of 3, I still count, even though I didn't get 3 in both exams. And if I took 3 exams and got all 5s, I count, but not any more than the others. How is that?
Well done.
You got it.
All righty.
So just go back for a second. Do you
Sure.
look at that? Obviously, you're aggregating data, but do you look at that and say, are the people who are not getting 3 but are they just taking 1 and getting a 2 or a 1? Or do you have students who take multiple ones and get below 3? Like, I mean, theoretically, you should have a really high number for that if people are taking multiple tests and you're going to get a 3 on one of them, right? Because
The issue with that is seniors, who many don't get 3 or better on any of their exams,
because they just don't show.
and they're not going to count for anything in college.
And they're already
in college.
But they enroll in it because it shows on the
Sure, sure, sure.
tourist.
So do you do like a strip it out and see what happens in the non-senior group? Is it like 100% for non-seniors?
It would be
That would be
much, much.
Yeah.
a sad statement about.
This is causing us to think about senior year a little.
That would be, I mean, a reason to think about that. Yeah.
Well, when we go through them, we usually know which ones are full of seniors. It's not hard to tell. But I think that Ann is right. I mean, we look for consistency here, which we see. And then in some cases, you know, it has caused us to think about at least second semester senior year. But if there's something more
I think
valuable we could be
more
doing.
remarkable number is the 487 to 710. And the 100, almost a 50% increase in students
Yeah.
taking APs. To what do you attribute that? More courses offered?
Yeah, and I think,
Perception that people
students
think it's
feel like they
important to
can
get
be
it.
successful in them, and students want to try at least one junior year and senior year. I think, there's been an expansion of opportunity for, most students to have success in the AP course.
By graduation, how many of the graduating seniors have taken a single AP class?
Has to be a high number.
Pop quiz, right?
I'm gonna say like
It's pretty high.
over.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would put it that high too.
Yeah. Interesting.
Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about ACT and SAT data. In 2018, we had 83 students take the exam with the composite score being 28. We had slightly less kids last year take the ACT, and we had a composite score of 29. Would you like me to explain what a composite score means? No. Great. I can.
I'd like you to compare and contrast it to the next slide.
Ooh. Okay, this is the SAT information. Last year, we had 59 students last year take the SAT exam. In evidence-based writing, the average was 683 and 662 in math, with a total of 1325 out of a possible 1600. That's a slight increase from the prior year because we had about the same number of students taking the exam.
Does the percentile that generate compare to the ACT one? Are they both about the same?
No, I think this is
We'll
higher.
calculate that for you in a moment.
In the low 80s. I already checked that. It's like
For
80.
both?
Yeah, like you're saying the 1325 over 1600 and then 29 over 36, right?
Not
No,
the
that's a
percentage
comparison.
of, but if you got a 1325, they will tell you like that's the 87th percentile in the country. Like how many
well,
students in the whoever took the test is above or below you?
Yeah. So I think I did have that information for 2000 and, they released that after a certain amount of time.
I would bet that's a pretty high. On
Yeah.
SAT. I don't know what it would be. For
I don't
the
think
ACT.
it's that high for the ACT.
I don't know. Yeah.
You know? It's pretty high.
Yeah, I think at one point I had some information that said 1340 was at the 90th percentile.
I mean, it's different from test, but that's
It's different
probably the
from
zip
year to
code.
year.
But the ACT, I don't have any I don't have any sense for.
It's not a bad number, I'm saying, but as compared to where the 1325 is going to get you in a percentile with the SAT, I think that the SAT score is higher.
I think you're right.
And we surely had kids who outperformed that number as well.
Well, it's an average, right?
Right.
It's an average.
Okay, so I'm just going to return back to this. Our students are, with all the factors that go into the college admissions process, they are doing quite well. And they are,
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice.
I think very happy with their choices, and they're supported really the whole way
I
through.
don't
So
know. 29 is about a 13.
it's
so.
really an honor on their behalf. These kids are all there now, working very hard
Yeah.
to sort of tout their accomplishments and wish them well. And that's
Not to where you would say you should.
what I have for you. Questions?
Yeah.
That's just, I think, last year, where, did we ever collect data of the high schoolers that go on to college and then see how they
Is your
do in
husband, is your
college?
husband involved?
Well,
Is there any data we collect?
He's
that-
asking what data we collect on graduates.
So, just this past year, the counseling department did a foundation grant to do, we did a survey of the class of 2019 in the spring. That organization will go back and survey them. So 1 year out and then 5 years out. We've already taken a look at some of the data from the senior exit survey, and I think we plan to just continue to do this annually. Just for the cost of it, it does give us quite a bit of data, and we haven't even seen data from the students after a year or more at college. So that's something we're very interested in following.
And what type of questions, or what are you collecting?
How well prepared
For college.
at this point in reading and writing, math, critical thinking and problem solving? How often did you feel your work was connected to the real world?
They're
Did
in
you
college.
feel
What do
you
they
were
know
doing
about
your
everything?
best?
And that your teachers had rigorous expectations for you.
And is it like a scale of 1 to 10, like, like a what?
Some of them, I think it's extremely
Yeah.
good, or
I think-
excellent, good. It depends on the question.
4
Some
categories.
Do you get a good rate of response?
So we have them do it in class
Oh.
in the spring. I don't know what our rate of response will be a year out
Sure.
or 5 years out. So I'm hoping we get a decent amount of people to respond, because I think it's extremely useful data.
Sure. Does this mean that every kid who graduated last year went to college? Okay.
Thank
Before she
you.
leaves the podium, anybody have any other questions for Mara? Nice try.
Are there any weak spots that you see from the data that you want to address besides the what you talked about in the Common Core?
Personally speaking, I think we struggle with the 3 through 8 tests because it's 1 year it's one grade, another year it's another grade. So to try to find consistency in that data that would cause you to, really focus your
We
efforts.
only have about 110 kids, right? So
Yeah, is kind of tough. My overall takeaway from this is that what the work we've done, really instituting some research-based kind of consistent curriculum, has been helpful and has prepared the kids, better prepared the kids for these types of experiences and others. And I think there's a consistency that's happening now that is, came with a lot of change, but is something to honor and celebrate. We are going to look into that 5th grade in particular. We're going to work with the TC to help us analyze that data even further, just to kind of make sure. And I think we are still really looking at our literacy work to make sure that it's very aligned and kind of tight. But other than that one particular area, I see a lot of consistency here, and I see a lot of, incremental improvements across the number of students we're getting to proficiency levels. So I'm happy about that.
So even with the 5th grade class, however, and that dip that on those 2 days, for the rest of the year, I think the word you used was benchmark, that they very impressive numbers were reaching the benchmarks that exist every other day of the school year, right?
Yeah, and that.
So while you will take a look, as you must, right, because it is such a drop and all the rest of it, there's no reason for you to be overly concerned based upon what you see on a day-to-day basis from these students, right?
No, I don't think so. And I mean, even some of that data that we discussed in terms of internally collecting it, that's our teachers literally sitting with a kid and listening to them read and asking them some comprehension questions. You know, to me, that form of intimate assessment really tells you a lot about a student and is just as, you know, important as any other type of
Well, maybe it's
information.
more important, right? I mean, we don't want to be teaching to the Common Core exam, right?
Correct.
We don't. I don't think.
That's
Do we?
No, we don't.
No,
I don't.
it's
No, we
one, it's one point of information.
Yeah. And you evaluate it for what it is.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Mara.
Thank you.
Okay,
All right.
Dr. Kelly.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
I wanted to start off by echoing some of what Roy had shared about our new teachers. Mara and I had an opportunity to meet with the new teacher cohort this afternoon after school and review with them our Danielson model of evaluation. And it was actually a really fun hour, and we're very impressed overall with our new cohort. So that was exciting. Before you tonight are resolutions as it pertains to certified staff. This is the time of year where we ask you to consider approving our middle school advisors, our overages, our teacher mentors, as well as FMLA leave. So that would be resolutions A through J, please.
Great. Can I get a motion to approve resolutions A through J?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion, questions, comments? Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. We had some unexpected teacher aide resignations and have been working hard. Rakia Adams, our new elementary school assistant principal, has gotten lots of experience in a very short amount of time in terms of interviewing and attempting to secure. So as pleased as we are that these teacher aides found, you know, promotions out there, it was unfortunate that it happened in the beginning of September. So before you, you have teacher aide resignations as well as new teacher aide appointments. In addition to a substitute nurse for you to consider, a substitute teacher. And we are pleased that we have been able to secure a new library clerk for our elementary library. That too was a unanticipated resignation. Our prior library clerk became a librarian. In addition, you have special other stipends before you this evening and co-curricular advisors, a change to the fall coaches roster to include our varsity diving coach, as well as a substitute athletic trainer. So for your consideration, items K through X, please.
Just ask one question on the football. It's still showing varsity, JV, and modified, and I thought that had switched a little bit, but we still have all those coaches on the.
We still have the same amount of coaches. We are negotiating now what, if any, changes should be made to those two stipends.
There's still 3 teams, right?
Correct.
And the 8-9 isn't really a modified team, it's more of a freshman team, right?
It's actually 7, 8, 9 is my
And
understanding.
no 7th graders on it.
He knows.
There are no 7th graders presently on it. And they're active more days than the modified, than the 7-18. So that's where we're talking about, we need to take a look at the time. Plus, we started the JV team with coaches and a preseason, which is very different than.
And we anticipate, Karen, that going back, this is something of a one-shot. Next year, we will have a JV team again, and there's some interest, certainly, particularly in light of the longstanding great job that the 2 coaches have been doing in maybe not doing anything to disturb the apple cart more than to accommodate for this one-shot, one-off year, right?
We have the same, if not more kids involved in the grades that they broke out in. So I just see it as a one-year flip as those kids now come through. We've got 45 kids on the 7-18, 25 on the 8-19. So it's a healthy group.
What happens if we refuse to accept the resignations of any of the teachers' aides. Just, it appeals to my sense of whimsy if somebody
Continue
were
to
to
get
tell
paid,
them,
but they don't work
the
here.
school board refused to accept your resignation and you're bound here forever.
Well, given that I've already found replacements, I think we'd be
All right,
remiss.
Motion, I need a motion to approve K through
X.
X.
Move.
Second.
Any more comments, questions, discussion? Great. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank
Anybody
you.
against? Okay, thank you. That takes us to Dan, I think.
The board has a very preliminary financial summary for the months of August and the months of July. It's obviously really early on, too soon to really project surpluses at this point. However, we know we're going to hit our regular education tuition students number because they're already enrolled. That's simple math. And county sales tax, we've been informed we should expect a decent surplus on that this year because the rate went up after the budget was approved. I have one financial action item, which is the approval of a contract with Altaris for our, basically what amounts to our safety and security director, which is Robert Lancia, who's been here for a week now. He's an impressive guy, and I think he's going to do great things for us. He's been directly involved in upgrading the training for our Securitas staff and has been really going through and evaluating all week. So this contract provides for his compensation through Altaris, and it's basically a school year, a 10-month contract. We don't really see a need for him much over the summer, so he'll basically kind of work the same calendar as teachers do.
So he works for the consulting firm.
Exactly.
And then just happens to be our representative from that.
Yep.
Okay.
Can the consulting firm switch him out?
They could. It's unlikely that they would do that unless he either resigned or we requested it. Because they hired him to fill this spot. You know, he interviewed here, he toured here. You know, he met with Roy and I, and decided to leave where he was to come work in Bronxville.
I didn't have a chance to spend as much time on the contract as I would like to, but we should make sure that we're in control
Sure.
of that.
So, like on a day-to-day basis, what is he doing?
Boy, he's been walking around. He's been working the software on our cameras to kind of sort them differently so we can access them in different ways. So he's involved in the technology. He's been meeting all principals and administrators and as many teachers as he can. He's been meeting with our Securitas staff and getting the lay of the land so he can make recommendations. And also we had an evaluation done by Altaris last year, so he's looking to see how he can implement some of those recommendations.
Is he armed?
No.
And eventually be doing some training with our staff as well. We update our procedures and things like that. So he'll be involved in some staff development, of course.
So would he have been involved in the district-wide safety plan, the development of that plan?
Absolutely.
He
Okay.
will be.
He will
This
be.
one he was developed when, he wasn't really.
Yes.
He wasn't here yet, but
here
that
yet,
would be
so.
something he would
Correct.
look at
Yep.
ASAP.
He'll be part of the
as an
safety
example.
committee. Eventually, I'd like him to take over the safety committee. In fact, I was recently at a meeting at the hospital with the president of the hospital, president of Concordia, president of Sarah Lawrence College. 4 of us are trying to get together and have the safety directors meet together as well so we can coordinate our efforts. And, it came about from that situation that was at the hospital last year. And we realized that there was no good communication tool that we had with each other to make sure everybody knows what's happening within our own community. So we're starting that process as well. He'll be intimately involved in that.
Great. Any more discussion or questions on this one? Can I get a motion to approve the all terrace resolution?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions, discussion? Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Facilities.
We had a, before I move on to facilities, we had a large impact on our finances today. We sold over $20 million worth of bonds for the large bond project that we have, and we got a very favorable total interest cost of under 2%, which will allow the board to consider some of the projects that we had to jettison because bids came in too high. In order to do that and still remain tax neutral, at today's rates, it gives us about $2.5 to $2.7 million worth of flexibility to issue more bonds to possibly absorb or undertake those projects such as the curtain wall or the innovation center that we had to put on hold because the bids came in too high. So that's something the board can consider. We could do another bond issue, which would require another referendum and still stay under, the commitment to being tax neutral to where we were.
Dan, remind me, what was the interest rate we kind of estimated when we went out to the community?
It was about 4%. We had very conservative estimates, so we were estimating about 4%. So, that's where, when we sold them at 1.9, that's where that flexibility comes from.
So that's obviously great news. Thank
Yeah.
you for that update. So I think your comment is something we should think hard about because I think grudgingly didn't take up all of the things we would have liked to have done.
Sure.
But now a lot of the variables have been fixed, so we have a lot less risk in what is left to do in terms of planning. There's a lot of execution risk left to do in the construction, but I think we might want to talk about that as a board and maybe next meeting do something about a go-forward plan there.
Certainly. So that was a good day all the way around. And moving on to facilities. Let's see, there's no action items this evening. But for an update, the library is coming along well. It's slowing down, waiting on some long lead items. We expect to be occupying the library in the first week of October.
Always there.
Temporary doors and overhead LED light fixtures are expected to be longer lead items, almost to November.
That's what
But we're going to occupy before those come in. Looks great. That we rewired the chandelier fixtures and they're up. And right now we're just finishing the casework and waiting for countertops, which we expect in the next couple of weeks. Stormwater and sidewalk, stormwater connection from Meadow Avenue to the pump system is going very well. We expect that to be done by about October 15th. I had a lot of pause with the contractor because they didn't really start as soon as we wanted them to, but they've been doing excellent work. They're working in tight areas and they're working very safely, which to me is impressive. They're getting a lot done with not a lot of room to work with. So kudos to them, and hopefully, we'll be all tied in by October 15th. So keep those storms south.
Didn't let it rain.
Meadow Avenue edition. That is expected to start around December. It will be preceded by work on a third floor addition, which will be done on second shift and should start within a few weeks. They're going to start, working on the building additions during this school year.
When will the Meadow entrance go offline?
December.
Not till December.
Yeah, not till December. That's what we're expecting.
And when will the classrooms go offline?
They're not going to do that. Not till next summer. They're not going to break inside. They're doing they're going to work on the outdoor project deck. First, Ann has told us that there's no room, so we can't do that.
No, we,
I'll just remind Ann that they asked for this, so they,
it's
careful what you ask for.
So that's, as far as the facilities update, that's it. If there's any questions, any more questions? Thank you.
So the next topic is a district-wide safety plan. I think this is just a first reading of it, so we,
Yeah. You have to actually officially open up a hearing, a public hearing, in case anybody has a comment that would
I
like
officially
to.
open up the public hearing regarding the district-wide
MOU.
safety plan, MOU. So we now are. in
If
the
anybody
hearing.
wants to
If anyone
comment
would
from
like to comment
the,
on that.
like on the MOU,
Is it simply on the MOU? I've gotten a lot of requests from parents who have a concern about the lighting on Meadow, particularly as it starts to get dark earlier. And even they recognize that the people across the street might have something to say if all of a sudden we have Klieg lights on Meadow Avenue. But they asked for consideration as a safety matter for lighting to be improved while the students are being dropped off, picked up, etc.
Yeah, obviously that's been an issue for years. It's been a tug of war with the people right across the street. I will say that we're having a consultant look at all of our lighting, interior and exterior, because we want to make a wholesale switch to LED lighting where we can. We think we can save a lot on energy costs. So we're having a consultant who's worked off the New York State contract come through and look at all of that for us. But, I mean, I don't think there's anybody here who would disagree that Meadow Avenue, especially the area adjacent to the school going up the hill, is rough. It really isn't, and we know it. It's an issue.
I wonder if we could put lights in the sidewalk going up as opposed to top coming
I
down.
think we put the lights up, and if the people across the street want to complain, we'll say, well, it's for the safety of the kids, so if you don't like kids, that's fine.
Yep.
There's that. Yeah, I wonder if you could do it that way.
Well, I'd rather have them complaining than
Yeah.
something else.
Yep.
Agreed.
Okay, is there anything else we need to be doing on the first
No,
reading?
you can close the
session?
public hearing.
I'm going to close the public hearing on the Altaris
MOU, yes.
Okay,
It's a new requirement from the state, which is why we need to do that, by the way. It came in July, that they require you to have a MOU if you're with local law enforcement or Altaris or an outside firm or something like that. And then they ask you to share with stakeholders to see if anybody has a comment on it. And you have to leave it open for 30 days. So then we'll approve it in the October board meeting.
So this has been shared with all of the parties
We
that are
sent it out
referenced in
to-
here,
yes,
like the
yeah.
nursery school, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. It's really impressive.
Yeah. So that's why we're doing it now. We'd never been asked to do this before. so.
Okay.
okay, any committee reports from anybody or any other board business?
I mean, we had a finance meeting, but Dan already gave you the good news on the bond offering.
Yes, it's really
So
great
it was
news.
good.
It's
Dan did a
very
great
good news.
job
Nicely
on it.
done, Dan.
We'll have audit committee.
And we got a ratings upgrade, which is,
We did.
goes along with it.
Audit
Oh,
committee
yeah,
will
some-
come up
yeah.
now.
Okay.
We'll be busy in the next month.
I think we probably have a slew of meetings coming up, so at the
Mhm.
next board meeting, we can report back on
Yep.
various things.
Dan, could you just summarize very briefly the ratings upgrade we got?
We were a AA2. We were upgraded to AA1, which is a step below AAA, which I believe 3 Westchester districts are actually AAA, which they are Byram Hills, Scarsdale, and Chappaqua. And I was told the reason we're not AAA is because we don't hoard fund balance like some of those districts do.
Well, congratulations to you, Dan, for all your work towards that.
Thank you.
At this point, I'd like to open up for any public discussion or commentary. Seeing none? Okay, great. I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Good deal. Nice job.
So I see Jim Magnotta doesn't